Hey, what is up, Limitless Nation? It's your boy, Coach Andy Riise, back in the building. So happy to be with you guys. It's been a minute. So great to be back here with you today on MindGym Mondays, where I am joined by my amazing colleague, Karla, where we're going to chop it up, talking about giving you some practical tools, techniques, and processes you can put into action to train your brain, y'all. I am so excited to be joined, representing Houston's finest, representing H-Town, Southeast Texas. Miss Karla, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing, Andy?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been a busy July. How's your summer been, Karla?
It's been really good. Also a busy July. Did some trips with the littles, some trips with the ladies, and I cannot believe that it's already July 31st.
Right? It's the dog days of summer. We're already getting ready to go back to school. Can you believe that?
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to Mari. She was always back. She's producing us. She's back on the ones and twos. She's the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain that's making all this magic happen for us. Mari, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who's joined us, especially you stalwarts out there, folks like Lance, who are showing up, or your Sean Reddy McVetti, who's always showing up and showing out here in Limitless Lives. Today, we're going to jump right into it, right? And, Carla and I, we love to laugh. We love to like to keep things light and fun. But you know what? We're not afraid to lean into the hard stuff, right? Because that's where the growth zone is. We're talking about things that kind of make us a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit nervous. We like to avoid it sometimes in social situations. Hey, we're jumping right into this thing head first today. We're talking about grief, right? And you may be saying, "Oh, hold on, we're talking about grief. Whoa, well, this is a pretty heavy subject, right?" But something special happened last week when I gave Karla a call, and what we do is we like to be able to do a pre-planning session before we do our lives, and we figure out, hey, what do we want to talk about? And usually it's something that's on our mind. And I got to tell you, folks, that I'm really proud of Karla for a couple of reasons. One is her willingness to be vulnerable, right? Because sometimes, how many times do you ask somebody, hey, how you doing? And they're like, I'm just okay. And you can kind of hear in their voice, because most humans communicate with body language, and you can hear their tone and tempo. It doesn't have anything to do with what they say, but it has to do with how they say it. And if something just comes off a little bit off, and Karla said, I'm just doing okay. And I know Karla well enough to know that she was not okay, right? And there's a reason why that is, right, Karla? So why you're going through some tough times right now, some loss.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, just kind of tell us a little bit about what you're going through to really set the stage for talking about how we can be more compassionate in helping ourselves and helping others in the grieving process. Go ahead.
No, and Andy, I just appreciate you so much for framing this thing. When we last spoke, I was walking into the song rehearsal for a funeral. I'm a singer. It's one of the things that I love to do. I've been doing it since I was, 3, with my sisters as an a cappella gospel quartet. And now as an adult, I get a chance to link up with different groups of folks who love to sing for different purposes. And we got tapped about a week and a half ago um, to sing at a funeral for our minister's mother. And so when you and I spoke this past Thursday, we were officially heading into that service.
Right.
And, I contrast her life, 86 years old, 5 children, 27 grandchildren, 28 great grandchildren, and
Wow.
2 great great grands, right?
Wow.
So, in so many ways, the service was a celebration
Mm.
of a life well lived, a life fully lived. The place was packed
Mm.
with people from all different walks of life. I ran into people that I didn't know were connected to her, and I'm connected to them. And, so when you've had impact like that, right, it just kind of reverbs out. And it was so beautiful. It really was.
Mm.
Of course, they're still crying, there's still loss, but in so many ways, a celebration. And
Yeah.
I contrast that with the news that I got on Monday morning
Mm.
of losing the husband of one of my very best friends on the planet.
Mm.
You know, he was in his early 40s. His children are 8 and 5.
Mm.
They're still very much writing their story.
Yeah.
So that's the season. That's
Mm.
what's going on. That's what is happening in the context, of us showing up to do this mindset work. And I
Yeah.
am so grateful you did not miss a beat saying, "Oh, I've been doing some work in the grief space recently. Let's just talk about it." You know, it was just incredible. We just did not miss a beat, Andy.
Yeah.
And so here we are opening up space and hopefully opening up space for those who are listening to
Right.
us to deal with this challenge because it's a part of the human experience.
You're absolutely right, and thank you for being willing and open to talk about it, right? And just to let you all know, I mean, this is not my area of expertise. I was telling Karla, we were in the green room before. The reason why this came up is I had a really unique opportunity to provide a video series on the topic of resilience for different subtopics. And one of the things that the VA, so this is all the medical centers and all the VA medical professionals get this video training series. And we wanted to make it something useful, again, kind of like a MindGym type thing, exactly what we're all about. It's all about knowledge times application equals infinite possibilities, to quote and paraphrase our amazing leader, Josh Lifrak. But to that end, we were talking about grief, and I'm like, hey, hold on, this isn't my wheelhouse. But but I'm willing to take this on because maybe I'll learn something about it too. Because obviously I'm not a stranger to the process of death and dying. Haven't been a soldier, spent 20 years in combat. I also had a lot of trauma early on in my young life that inspired me to join the Army. My brother-in-law, Christopher Walter, was killed outside his home in 1994. And just really was this incredibly tragic event. He died in front of my sister, who had also been a soldier, had just left the Army. And then I came back and just everything changed. So I had this front row view to what resilience and the grieving process was like when I was at my most formative time in my life. And I had to switch schools to live with her. My sister couldn't live by herself. She was going through a lot of difficulties. By the way, she had a 6-month-old son, my oldest nephew, Hank. And so we were trying to rally around her to not only understand what we were going through, because it was the first time we'd ever experienced loss, kind of like the latter story that you were talking about. When a loss is a loss, right? Whether someone's 80 or someone dies tragically when they're in their 30s or 40s, right? Or that you lose a pet, lose a job, a marriage. A loss is part of this experience. So I think it's important for us to first frame what this is all about, what grieving is, and maybe we start off with talking about what it's not. So what do you? So Carly, I mean, you're in it, right? I mean, so talk to us about what's a couple things that are a couple misconceptions about grieving in terms of what it's not, some myths and misconceptions.
Yeah. So one of the things that Megan Devine talks about, right, in the piece that you and I are sharing, was that it's like love. It's an emotion.
Yeah. Right.
And it's a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
And we've never asked anyone to, I guess, get over love,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Or stop having it. And so why would we ask for that or expect that in grief, right?
Yeah.
I really appreciate that contrast
Right.
between love and grief. And if we
Mhm.
know that we move through grief and it has its seasons and it has its times, or we move through love, right? And it
Yeah.
has its seasons and it has its times.
For sure.
It has its ups and it has its downs. Then we can see that similarly for grief.
Yep.
It's just an emotion that is a necessary part of the human experience.
Right.
And so it's not a disease to get over.
Yep.
It's not a a moment that looks the same for everyone.
Yeah.
If you're asking me what grief is not,
Right. Right.
and it's not a it's not an opportunity for us to fix it.
You nailed it. It's not a problem to be solved, and it's
Yeah.
not a something that is fixable, right? Because when we
Mhm.
go through that human experience, we are fundamentally changed, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like we bounce back to who we were, because we have fundamentally changed. And the great thing that connected back to what we talk about in Limitless Minds is it takes this human experience and it makes it neutral, right?
Mm.
It makes it neutral. And Mari, do you mind throwing up a definition again? We're referencing something from the Children's Cancer Research Fund. So these are our ideas. Megan Devine is an author who wrote about it, and we can share that link if you're interested. but this is the working definition of what grief actually is. So it's a mental and emotional experience following a loss of any kind, not just a death, but it can be a loss of any kind, big or small. It's all relative, but it's an emotion kind of like love, right? And so how do we go through the process of getting to neutral when it comes to the grieving process? That's the key, right? And I think there's sometimes, we have the best intentions, but just like my grandma used to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But we show up in ways that are either empathetic or compassionate. I just want to break that down, the difference, right? Because Brene Brown talks about that as a famous cartoon, went viral. You've got the animals, one's looking at the animal who's falling down in the pit. And sympathy is when you're kind of you're the person up on the pit and you're looking down at the person who's in the pit who's going through a difficult experience. You say, oh man, that sucks to be you, right? Empathy is actually now saying, oh wow, what happened in getting down into the hole and trying to experience the mental and emotional aspect of going through challenge, change, or adversity. And then the next level, this is the next level things we're really encouraging you all to do, is to move from empathy to compassion, right? Now, not just understanding how someone's thinking or feeling, but then doing something about it, right? Doing something, this is showing up and showing out for someone with compassion when they're going through the grieving process. So it's kind of curious. We're going to kind of I want to get into some of the best practices, maybe some of the do's and do nots, right? So Karla, what are some of the things that you're experiencing right now are the things that you should do and not do in order to show up with compassion when someone's going through the grieving process, to include yourself?
Yeah. And I want to put this in context because I'm both trying to be helpful to our audience, right? And be honest that I'm in a stuck place of grieving for my friend.
Yeah.
Both were friends, right? Like I appreciated the person who is gone. I am I've been in a friendship for almost 20 years with the one who's left, right? And then I'm also half a country away from them, and managing life where I am now, doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing now, but truly desiring to be there to comfort my friend, right? And so my own emotions in both of those places, as the one who's grieving and the one who's trying to support, there's guilt, there's weight, there's a sense of responsibility, and disbelief for sure. Thinking, this is just not possible. This is like a dream. It's not possible.
Not real.
Exactly. We were in each other's weddings. We've celebrated the first birth and the second birth and the birthday parties and all of that. And so that disbelief, that this is unreal type of feeling is very much accessible to me right now. So some of the things about, what I would anticipate both doing for someone else and needing for myself is just the space to be heard.
Right.
Just the safe space to be heard. And I call it sacred space. That's what I do in coaching communities is I curate those sacred spaces for people to feel like they can be vulnerable, transparent. They can lay the mask down, take off the cape, right? And just show up completely as themselves.
Right.
And some of those emotions are not always kosher. They're not always what you would want people to see of you, right? They're not always packaged super well.
Right. It's ugly. Yeah, it's messy.
It's so important to create and hold space for the messiness.
Yeah. I know there's more of an art than a science to that, Karla, right? Because we talk about, getting to acceptance is really difficult, right? And looking at things as they are, knowing that, trying to look at things objectively, when it's a very emotional experience, right? How do you assess what that space looks like, right? Because here's a mistake that I think people find is like they back off, right? They think I need to give this person space, so I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to reach out to them because they need time, right? And sometimes they find that's the opposite of what that person needs, right? So how do you assess how are you assessing the art of space to get to acceptance with what you're going through now, Karla?
Yeah, I tell you what, doing the whole like, let me give her space, that feels like neglect. It
Yeah,
really does. It
right.
really does. And I will talk about an experience I had last night, right? Where, someone in my community is aware of the same loss and
Mm,
it's impacted them,
right.
right? And there were two other pieces of bad news that came at the same time. So three pieces of bad news. And she's saying, this is shaking me, right? This
Yeah.
is shaking me. And I started to go into coaching mode,
Yeah.
right? And looking at the facts and trying to do some logical reasoning around it,
Hmm.
right? Thinking that that's where she was because she wasn't as close to the loss as someone else, right?
Right.
But that's misjudging,
Mm,
right? So in that space is the listening.
right.
It's the truly hearing and understanding,
Yep.
right? When we create the space, first of all, we want to be present. So
Yep.
get in the space,
Here now.
open
Be
up
here.
the
Get clear.
space.
Yep.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly, right? And second, listen so
Hmm.
that you can understand
Hmm.
before seeking to be understood,
Right.
right? And you can really fully appreciate where the person is,
Mm.
right? And then
Mm.
the third thing that happened in that space last night was this person was angry
Hmm.
and frustrated.
Right.
And that was clear in tone and in choice of words,
Hmm.
right? And so that's one of the things I've experienced with someone who's grieving
Yeah.
is their anger.
Yep.
Maybe even their rejection of the last thing you said,
Right.
in your intention to say the right thing, be
Right.
helpful and whatever, right? So you've opened up the space, you've gotten into the space, you've listened, and now
Mm-hmm.
you're getting these angry words, right?
Yep.
There's a whole nother opportunity to feel like retracting and
Right.
pulling out and
Right.
staying away. Oh, maybe this means that they need space, which means me not here.
Right.
And I say, maybe not. If you're
Mm.
listening really well, right? You might need to actually just sit there and take it.
Right.
Because what's it going to hurt you for
Right.
this hurting, grieving person
Mm-hmm.
to have the opportunity to be angry,
Yeah.
and you hold space for that, right?
Mm. Mm.
And sure enough, I was able to pull back,
Mm-hmm.
listen. They
Mm-hmm.
were able to, verbalize and express one of those ugly emotions,
Mm.
right? And I'm only saying ugly here, right? I
Mm-hmm.
didn't label that. I didn't say that to them, right?
Right.
It's a real human emotion. And then,
Mm-hmm.
we were able to move into the asking of more of what you need,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Love that.
So we've opened up the space.
Right. Create
We've
space.
gotten into the space
Step into it.
with them.
Yeah.
Yes,
With presence.
yes,
Yep.
right? We're present, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're listening.
Yep.
We're dealing with potentially uncomfortable, angry emotions,
Right.
right? And then we ask a little more of what they need.
Right. Yeah. To truly understand, like becoming aware, then moving to understanding what they need. Because
Yeah.
sometimes we assume people need what they need is what we need, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you're describing here, Karla, and y'all, she just gave you 3 to 4 steps right there of things, very simple things to do that are
Mm-hmm.
very difficult because we don't start, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the important part of this process is our role to be compassionate during the grieving process for both ourselves and for others that we care about who are going through it, is to become a cast, right? It's to become a cast for their broken bone of grief, to offer a safe, protected place for them to understand where they are and help them get to where they need to go. That's what our role is. We're the cast. And Karla just described that beautifully, right? And I think sometimes we'd like to, we use the golden rule instead of the platinum rule, right, Karla?
Mm-hmm.
The golden rule is I want to treat other people the way I want to be treated. The problem with
Mm-hmm.
that is it makes it about you, and it's not about you. It's
Mm.
about the platinum rule. I need to treat other people the way they want to be treated, right? And that first becomes aware. Then I move to understanding, and now I can move from empathy to compassion. That's the difference there, and really truly be that cast that they need, right? And I found that this is an interesting thing. I heard this story from a good friend of mine who tragically lost his daughter, who's a freshman in high school or freshman in college, to a shooting, a mass shooting. She's happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, they had a daughter and a son, so he lost a child, and I can't even imagine what it's like losing a child, and anybody having to go through that. And he was talking about, he lives in Napa, California, and he was talking about he saw someone who hadn't seen him since the thing happened, and he met this person in the grocery store and had this conversation, and she cried and she broke down, and she was talking about, she was trying to relate to him, but really it occurred to him in the moment that she was making it about her, trying to relate to her loss of someone that she had lost, which really the comparison kind of lost him in itself in there too, because now you're trying to, but at the end of the day, he walked away, and then the other person said was, well, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. Right. To someone who's grieving and who's in survival mode, the last thing you're going to do is think about the other person and what they can do for you, and ask for help sometimes. Right. So I'm kind of curious, Karla, like, what are some, when we want to act, right? We walk through the steps that you just talked about, and we actually want to act on this, right? We understand what they need, and now we want to act on that. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so with that getting understanding, right? We're just trying to get to clarity of what it is they actually need. And then what it looks like is being ready to do it if they ask for something specific, right? And that may be you who can deliver on it, right? It may be a referral to someone else who can deliver on it because you can't, right? And I think, to be honest, that's part of why people don't start at the beginning of that funnel that I just laid out, because they're uncomfortable with what could possibly be asked of them, and then they're uncomfortable with being able to be honest that they can't do it, but that they're not capable, or that they don't want to be inconvenienced if they are capable, whatever it is. And I'm not saying this with any judgment. Like, I'm one of those human beings who has limitations because I happen to be a human being.
Yes, right.
So I can't do all the things. I can't be all the things.
Right.
I can't respond to all the needs in the right way at the right time. Right. But once I have gotten to an understanding of what they need, right, and it turns out that I can't, I think a little bit of honesty goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I think Megan Devine talks about that.
Right.
The awkwardness of being honest and saying, I'm not exactly sure what to say right now.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what to do right now.
Right.
I've never experienced this. I have no idea what you're feeling. Right. I just want to be here in any way that I can be.
Yeah.
Right. And I saw the word awkward, and I thought, henna.
Right? There you go.
Awkward, right?
There you go.
But it's like, Megan Devine literally says, the person who's grieving will appreciate more the awkwardness of you being honest about your human limitations, right, than you staying away, or attempting to fix it. Kind of put up a jump shot, right. And be like, and we're done. Right?
Yeah, you're spot on, right? So I think that what you're talking about, Karla, I want to highlight some other comments here. First of all, thank you, Callan and Lane, everyone, Josh. Shout out to Josh for throwing up your comments here as well. Thank you, Lane, for showing a resource. He actually pointed out a really cool documentary, Limitless, which obviously is near and dear to all of us. With Chris Hemsworth, check that out. Great episode there as well too. But I think offering some solutions, right? And again, we're not trying to solve a problem, but right, when it comes to doing something, instead of leaving it open-ended, and again, Megan Devine talks about this. And I remember I was a Gold Star mother, a good friend of mine who was killed in Afghanistan. She had 3 young kids, and shout out to Tammy Kennedy, Candy Kennedy, my friend Thomas Kennedy was killed in Afghanistan. She talked about, hey, when people just offered, can I bring somebody some meals, right? She's clearly a mother. She's got young kids. And someone said, hey, would it be okay for me to bring a meal over to your family this weekend? Right. And I'll just ring the doorbell, and I'll leave it there too. We don't even have to have any type of engagement. But like, hey, another thing that I noticed other people do, hey, can I mow your lawn? Right. And so offering something instead of making it open-ended when you just don't know how to breathe and wake up and move forward with your day is another way that you can move from empathy to compassion and really be that next level person that to show up and show out for someone we're going through the grieving process. I know. Are there any questions out there too? I want to curious if there's any more questions or comments from the audience. In terms of our great followers and listeners out there in Limitless Nation. Go ahead and throw up your questions if you have any. And while we're doing that, Karla, any final thoughts about this
Oh
topic
gosh.
on home?
Andy, I want to ask you, to be honest, I want to ask you how old you were in 1994, and what you learned dealing with that. It sounds like pre-kids, pre-adulthood for you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, Karl. I mean, I was a sophomore in high school, so I think I was like 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. And losing Christopher was a massive blow to me and my family, but it's interesting. His friends that leaned in and did what we're talking about, they came back around. And I remember Chris, before he died, he said he was encouraged me to apply to go to West Point, and he said that one of the things that he wanted to teach at West Point. And so when he died, I met all these amazing people that were in his life. One of them was actually played football for Army. Brother Ratliff, shout out to him. He got me recruited. Another one told me about the preparatory school, and I'm going to the preparatory school. And these guys that I wanted to be like were like Christopher, and they were closest friends. And so it became part of my mission, not only to join the Army like my sister and my brother-in-law did, but to finish what he started, right? Mm-hmm. And so I did those things, and it became this really important thing for me to do as part of my life's mission, at least early in my first half of my career, is to finish the mission. And I did that. And a really cool final story too is my last assignment, was that he's buried in Bodega Bay, California, but he had a brick in the Ranger Memorial, which was about 100 yards from where I parked every day before, where I taught at the Maneuver Center at Fort Moore in Georgia. It used to be called Fort Benning. And every day when I show up to work and when I leave, gave Chris a shout out. It's like, hey, we finished the race, man. And so turning tragedy into triumph was definitely an early lesson that I learned, and it's giving a firsthand front row view into what resilience looks like. My sister was still the most resilient person I've ever met, and what that looked like. And just because you go through a loss doesn't mean that you've lost. Mm-hmm. And we continue to be able to get stronger and move better together. And this is one of the ways that we can do that, is by showing up and showing out, by being here, being clear, understanding what people need, and then helping them get where they want to go. You did just a beautiful job of describing that, Karla. Can't thank you enough, and everyone out there, Limitless Nation, for this. Have a great rest of your week. Be sure to tune in tomorrow and the rest of the week here too. If you want to hear a topic, hey, give us a shout. We want to know what you want to learn about, so we can take that knowledge times application and create infinite possibilities. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. See you in the arena.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Have a great week.